I often love to escape into nature, to get away from all the city hustle and bustle, the dirty air, and the lack of human understanding. I'm lucky because I have a cabin in a small village, which is right in the middle of the forest. How much I loved going there on weekends. Why loved? Let me tell you. After a tough work week, I decided to go out of town as usual. I gathered some groceries, threw them in the trunk, and set off. I arrived in the evening, exhausted from the road, and went straight to bed. I fell asleep quickly and deeply. I was woken up by the sound of my car alarm. Well, I thought, maybe an animal ran by. I looked out the window, made sure there were no thieves, and turned off that awful noise. I lay down again and had just started to fall asleep when the alarm went off again. Without getting up, I pressed the button and everything went quiet. But 5 minutes later, the alarm blared again. Okay once, okay twice, but more than that, you start to think about the worst. A bit shaken, I got up, turned it off again, but didn't go back to bed. Instead, I started watching through the curtain to see who decided to play around in the middle of the night. I watched. And then I saw a shadow beginning to appear in the bushes by the light of the lantern. The shadow approached the car, revealing its shape. Something skinny, in a black cloak with a hood, almost 2 meters tall, with long, thin arms. It slowly walked up to the car, tapped the wheel, and went back into the bushes. At that moment, I knew it was time to start being afraid. Shaking with fear, I turned off the alarm and continued watching. The thing came out of the bushes, approached the gate, threw its arm over it, and removed the barrier keeping the gate doors closed. Fear gripped me. Who was this? What did it want from me? Why wasn't it leaving? I couldn't move. Goosebumps ran from my head to my feet and back again, causing my body to shudder. My mouth went dry, and my thoughts began to paint terrifying pictures. Clenching my teeth and fists, I pulled myself together and ran down the stairs as fast as I could. Just as I reached for the switch to find something, anything, to defend myself, I froze. I froze because it was looking in the window. Pressing its hands against the glass, it was trying to see if anyone was home. That's when I realized all these tricks with the car were to lure the victim outside. Why? I didn't want to know, but the fact remained. It was here, and it was looking for me. Its breath began to fog up the window. And I was glad because I couldn't tear my gaze away from its face. Ash-colored skin, covered in wrinkles. Deep, small black eyes, like beads. Instead of a nose, there were 2 holes. The breathing was so heavy and raspy that it made my own lungs tighten. There were no lips, just 2 rows of sharp yellow teeth. I couldn't be seen because I was deep inside the house. But it didn't intend to leave just like that. After standing by the window, it approached the door. A knock, then another. Through the gap under the door, I saw it trying to slip its fingers under the door. The handle started jerking up and down furiously. And the sounds. It didn't sound like a human voice. It was more like an animal's growl. You know when you try to take a bone away from a dog and it growls in anger? Something like those sounds, only angrier and deeper, was coming from this creature. I knew that if it heard me, it wouldn't leave me alone and would find a way into the house. So I just lay on the stairs and waited for it to end. Tears ran down my face involuntarily, no matter how hard I tried to hold them back. My temples began to throb so much that it felt like my soul was shaking. I passed out. When I woke up, I immediately looked at the door. The door was in place. I had never been so happy. Getting up from the steps, I looked out the window. It was already daylight outside, and the sun was quite high in the sky. Without thinking twice, I went upstairs, grabbed my keys, and without packing my things, went to the car. Stepping outside, I saw its footprints on the ground. Proof that I wasn't crazy. The broken handle, scratches on the door, and the gate boards lying in the middle of the road also told me so. Jumping into the car, I drove away from that village. On the way, I turned on the radio and heard that 2 girls' bodies were found in the area that morning. The bodies were mutilated and dumped in the swamp. It found what it was looking for after all. When I was a little girl, our family had to move frequently due to my father's job. I don't even remember all the towns and villages we lived in because sometimes we only stayed for a couple of weeks. But one small town left an indelible mark on my memory. My parents rented an old, dilapidated house for a few months. The house was in terrible condition and needed repairs. Water only ran in the bathroom. Unfortunately, it was located on the 2nd floor, next to the attic. I hated that room. The mere thought of it gave me the chills. The bathroom had a small door leading to the attic. It was always cold there, even though it was the height of summer. One evening, I was taking a bath before bed. I accidentally glanced at the small door in the bathroom wall. The door was always locked, and we didn't have a key, so none of us could get into the attic. Curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to see what was going on in the attic. I stepped out of the bath and looked through the keyhole. I couldn't see anything. The attic was pitch dark inside. I pressed my ear to the door and listened. I heard a faint scratching sound. When I looked through the keyhole again, I saw some movement in the darkness. In horror, I jumped back, and in the next moment, someone from the other side poked a sharp screwdriver through the keyhole. The end of the screwdriver jerked back and forth several times, as if someone in a frenzy was trying to stab the air. Then the screwdriver disappeared. They almost poked my eye out. I screamed in terror and ran out of the bathroom. I rushed downstairs and started calling for my parents. "Mom, Dad, come quickly. There's someone in the attic," I screamed. My parents calmed me down, and I told them what had happened. They didn't believe me, but just in case, my dad agreed to check the attic. He grabbed a hammer and a flashlight and started up the stairs, my mom and I cautiously following him. The small door in the bathroom was locked, and there was no key, so my dad removed the door from its hinges using the hammer. When he shone the flashlight inside, the attic was completely empty. My parents explained that my imagination had just run wild. A few weeks later, we moved out of that house and into another town. However, I could not forget that dreadful incident in the old house. It took a long time before I could comfortably take a bath again. Years passed, and I found myself in those parts again, deciding to visit the old house where I had spent a small part of my childhood. I contacted an old friend on Facebook. I had befriended him when we were children, and we arranged to meet. We went for a walk around the town, sharing memories. As we walked past the old house, I mentioned that I had lived there with my parents for a few months. "Oh, the screwdriver house," he chuckled. My blood ran cold. I had never told anyone about what happened to me in the bathroom years ago. "Why do you call it that?" I stammered. "That's what everyone calls it," he replied casually. "Haven't you heard the story?" "No. Tell me," I said in a weak voice. I felt as if my stomach was twisting into knots. "Shortly after the house was built, a family moved in, a husband, wife, and their 4 beautiful daughters," he said. "The wife died, and the husband, you could say, went a bit mad. No one knows why, but he killed all his daughters with a screwdriver and stashed their bloody bodies in the attic.